From loyal and faithful dogs to lions and gorillas with long memories, here are 11 incredible relationships between animals and humans. Mandie to the rescue. Noel Osborne was a 78-year-old farmer in Australia who suffered a broken hip after he was accidentally knocked into a heap of fertilizer. He was unable to move and was stuck there. Because no one was within earshot, his cries for help went unheard. But his goat Mandie heard him and stayed right there with Mr. Osborne for 5 days straight. The animal huddled close to him to keep him warm during some cold nights, and the goat allowed him to drink her milk to sustain himself until help finally arrived. No wonder the farmer later declared Mandie's milk to be the elixir of life. March of the Penguin. While penguins and Brazil are not typically linked together, we found an unusual connection between the bird and the country. In 2011, a retired bricklayer from Brazil named João de Souza found an injured penguin in Rio de Janeiro. The bird was coated in oil and couldn't move. Mr. de Souza took the animal home, cleaned it, and nursed it back to health. He even gave it a name, Dindum. Eventually, Dindum was returned to the water, but each year the two-legged survivor returns to Brazil to visit his rescuer. And even though penguins tend to look alike, researchers tagged Dindum to ensure that it was the exact same bird that returns each year to Mr. de Souza's backyard. While the behaviour might seem strange, experts have identified this critter as a Magellanic penguin, and that species is known to nest in the same location each year and with the same partner. Pet python. As kids, many of us had reptiles for pets, including turtles and chameleons. But did you ever know a kid that had a fully grown Burmese python as a pet? The story was initially reported back in 2008, and many people couldn't wrap their minds around a child keeping a deadly snake as a pet. According to the boy's parents, their son bonded with the snake at the age of 3 months. The two species not only slept together in the same cradle, they even learned to crawl together. At age 7, the boy and his humongous pet python became a tourist attraction and attracted some news coverage. The parents welcomed that attention, since the snake consumed more than 10 kilograms, 22 pounds of chicken per week. By 2011, the snake had grown to about 6 meters long, or 19 feet, while weighing 120 kilograms, or 264 pounds. We couldn't find much information on what happened to this kid and his monster pet snake. If you know anything, tell us in the comments below. As the crow gifts. Crows are known to be some pretty intelligent birds, and apparently they're very generous birds as well. The story of 8-year-old Gabby Mann made news for receiving gifts from crows. The little girl from Seattle was known to feed the animals in her backyard. That's normal enough, but it's unusual for the birds to reciprocate the gesture. Some of the gifts included items like buttons, beads, and even blue Lego pieces. If you'd like to receive gifts from crows, experts say that you have to form a bond with them by consistently giving them treats or rewards. Let us know if the birds give you any gifts. Lion-hearted. Pictures of a lioness greeting the man who saved her became one of 2014's biggest viral hits. Surga was a female cub that had been driven away from her pride. Alone on the plain, she would have certainly perished, if not for a conservationist named Van Gruner. He rescued the cat and raised her at a wildlife facility in Botswana, Africa. As their bond grew, Surga would typically hug Val as he arrived at the facility's gates. Years later, Surga grew up to 140 kilograms or 308 pounds, but their relationship was greater than ever. In fact, their story was so inspirational that it made it into a documentary called Saving Surga. If you've seen it, leave us a review in the comments. Bear with it. When it comes to bears, it's safe to say that most of us would best enjoy a relationship that involves a barrier separating us. But that's not the case with Jim Karwazik. He's famous for adopting a 1,500 pound or 680 kilogram Kodiak bear named Jimbo and treating it like his own child. The couple runs the Orphaned Wildlife Center in upstate New York, where they've kept another 11 bears, along with other injured and unwanted animals. Jim and his efforts found some viral fame in 2016 when videos attracted millions of views on Facebook. Karwazik claimed that playing with these animals was no more risky than petting a dog, but experts always caution, rightfully, that even captive animals can act on instinct, sometimes in a fatal fashion. Along with his wife Susan, Mr. Karwazik looked after their ursine son for more than 20 years before the critter died in 2018. Rest in peace, Jimbo. Greyfriars Bobby. The story of this Skye Terrier from Scotland is the first of 2 stories regarding relationships between dogs and humans that continued after the owner passed away. Bobby's story was made famous in the 19th century, where he was said to have spent 14 years guarding the grave of his owner. Located at the Greyfriars Kirkyard in the Old Town of Edinburgh, the dog became renowned for spending the rest of his life sitting there until he passed away in 1872. Bobby was later buried near that grave. Several books and movies based on the dog's life have kept the legend alive, and a commemorative statue of the famous dog is a popular tourist attraction. That's my boy. Damien Aspinall is an English businessman who runs a conservation operation that specializes in breeding gorillas and returning them to the wild. While more than 50 of the animals have been released into African jungles, one specimen stands out. A gorilla by the name of Queeby was raised from infancy by Mr. Aspinall, who seemed to regard the ape as his own son. When he turned 5, Queeby was returned to Gabon in Africa, and 5 years after that, in 2010, the conservationist returned to the jungle in search of his adopted son. Even Aspinall wondered if Queeby would remember him after an absence of half a decade, and even if the animal did remember, there was no guarantee of being welcomed into his territory. But when the Englishman called out, Queeby appeared and gently greeted him with caresses and hugs. He even introduced his human friend to the wives and children. Videos of the event went viral in 2010, gaining tens of millions of views on YouTube. Did you ever get to see it? Operation Breakthrough. Back in 1988, the relationship between human mammals and marine mammals made international headlines. That's when 3 California grey whales became trapped in the ice of Arctic waters near Barrow Point, Alaska. The trio was comprised of 2 adolescents and a baby, but none of them were able to hold their breath long enough to swim to open waters, some 5 miles distant, or 8 kilometers. After local Eskimos reported the animal's predicament to a whaling crew, the story was picked up by major TV networks and became headline news. Efforts to free the whales caused the Cold War superpowers of the US and the Soviet Union to join forces, something unheard of at the time. But together, the unlikely allies undertook a mission dubbed Operation Breakthrough that shattered the ice and freed the whales. The story was later turned into a movie called Big Miracle, released in 2012. Hachiko. And here's the second story of a relationship between human and canine that persisted after the owner's death. In Japan, this story is very well known, but it's also recognized around the world as an example of a dog's loyalty and fidelity. So much so that the animal's name, Hachiko, has become synonymous with those qualities. He was an Akita Inu that was diligent in meeting his owner every day after work at the Shibuya train station in Tokyo. That routine persisted until 1925, when the owner passed away at work and never showed up again. Even so, Hachiko would return to that precise location at the train station at the time his owner usually appeared. That went on for nearly a decade. During those years, stories about the animal had spread. People would leave food and other treats for him at the train station. Hachiko died in 1935, by which time his faithfulness had become legendary. Today, there are many tributes to him, including a permanent display at Tokyo's National Science Museum, and every year on March 8th, there's a remembrance ceremony for Hachiko at the Shibuya railway station. Christian the Lion. One of the best known stories of relationships between humans and animals would have to be the one about Christian the Lion. This animal was acquired by 2 friends, John Rendell and Ace Berg, from the Harrods department store in London. If that sounds strange, bear in mind that in 1969, the establishment had a so-called pet kingdom that sold exotic animals. After acquiring their pet and naming him Christian, the 2 friends soon faced a dilemma. Christian weighed 35 pounds or 16 kilograms when they bought him, but the little lion was growing bigger and bigger. After a year, the animal was too large to keep in London. A conservationist named George Adamson took Christian to Kenya, where the animal was rehabilitated and released into the wild. Years later, Rendell and Berg decided to visit Christian in Africa, even after being advised that the animal might not remember them. But when they arrived and located the lion, Christian playfully approached them, nuzzled their faces, and welcomed them into his pride. More than 30 years later, video of that reunion became a worldwide viral hit. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and click that bell for notifications for our next episode. Cheers!